Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. For homework tonight, I'm going to ask that you complete assignment 5.3a. I'm sure you saw that pop up in Schoology earlier this morning. If you did it already, great. Maybe get some homework done if you can after the video. If not, please make sure you read Chapter 5, Section 3, and then complete the key terms associated with that section in the iBook. Also, if you did not see already today, I published the results for the Chapter 5 Part 1 test, which was yesterday. So the portion of the test that you took in Schoology, you can look back and see the questions and see which ones you got wrong. And those questions, you want to make sure you study for the trimester exam later on this trimester, in late March, early April. Okay? We are going to take notes today. We're going to wrap up Section 2, and then I'll introduce Section 3, and we'll talk about Section 3 tomorrow when I'm back in class. So please take out your notes if you haven't done so already, and we're going to get started. Alright, so just a little refresher from what we talked about last week during the days we were remote. So we left off in the American Revolution at the Battle of Saratoga, or the end of the Battle of Saratoga, in which Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold were able to defeat Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne at the Battle of Saratoga, which is a major turning point in the war because it did not only end the British threat to cutting off New England from the rest of the colonies, but it also is going to bring a very important European power into this American Revolution, and that was France. And as you saw in the videos that I showed you guys last week, and I mentioned last week, we had Benjamin Franklin over there, who is the most famous patriot in Europe. He was the one in France doing the negotiations to form an alliance with France, and that alliance became official after the Battle of Saratoga, because the Battle of Saratoga is what the colonies, it's what we needed to prove to the rest of the world that we could stand up to Great Britain. And France is going to enter this war and basically makes the American Revolution a world war. Their alliance was official in the year 1778. You don't need to know the exact day and month. But even before the Battle of Saratoga, we know Congress sent Ben Franklin over because he was well liked in France. John Adams also helped foster this alliance as well. And in 1778, it was official. The reason why the French joined the revolution on the side of the colonies is because they wanted to see British lose, so that way they could gain back some of the land that they lost during the 7 Years' War. All right, Netherlands and Spain also go to war against Great Britain, which will be important to basically pull some troops out of Great Britain and force them to fight battles against two other countries. Spain will also supply the colonies unofficially with ammunition and weapons. And this is very important because it's going to turn the war into a world war, and Great Britain's pretty much up against the American colonies, its colonies, along with France, the Netherlands, and Spain. And all these countries are basically looking to get back at the superpower that has taken control of the land in North America. Now, getting to some important individuals that helped us throughout the American Revolution, probably one of the most famous individuals is Marquis de Lafayette. I think the play Hamilton has made him very famous. I'm sure you guys have heard, if you've seen the play on Disney Plus, or if you heard any of the lyrics. All right, there's one song that I think is all about Marquis de Lafayette. And Marquis de Lafayette, that is actually not his birth name. His birth name was much longer than that. Just a fun fact about him. He will go on to serve as an officer in George Washington's army. And he's an immigrant. He came over from France. He defied explicit orders from the French king, Louis XVI, who did not want to provoke Great Britain. And Marquis de Lafayette was able to avoid authorities. He crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and he's going to assist with the American Revolution beginning in 1777. All right, and that's when he'll be commissioned as a major general on July 31st, and he was only 19 years old. All right, he's 19 years old, very young. He's a newly commissioned general, and he's soon to be introduced to General George Washington, who will eventually become a lifelong friend. And Marquis de Lafayette and Washington will have a close relationship, even well after the American Revolution. And just to kind of give you an example of how close the relationship was, Marquis de Lafayette named his son George, after George Washington. Okay, so they had a very close relationship, and Marquis de Lafayette was there at all the major battles. He was injured at one battle, the Battle of Brandywine Creek, with George Washington. George Washington wasn't injured, but Marquis de Lafayette was. He recovered and was able to make it to the end of the American Revolution. And then eventually he goes back to France and helps provide a lot of influence during the French Revolution in 1789. All right. The next French person that provided a lot of help for the American Revolution was Comte de Rochambeau. He's also mentioned in the play Hamilton, if you've seen that play on Disney+. Rochambeau is given credit for the tactics used at the Battle of Yorktown. He is the one that ordered George Washington to come down from where he was in New York to surround the British at the Yorktown Peninsula. He's the one that helped bring the French Navy to pin General Cornwallis in at Yorktown, which we'll talk a lot more about later on this chapter. So Marquis de Lafayette and Comte de Rochambeau are two French. Know that they are both French, all right, soldiers that came over, all right, to help the colonists. I'll leave this slide up for like a second or two, and then move on to talk about some other volunteers that came over to help the American Revolution, to help the colonists. All right, some other volunteers that came over to help the American colonists. One, Thaddeus Kosciuszko. I mentioned him back during the Battle of Saratoga. He was one that built fortifications, and those fortifications enabled the Continental Army to defend itself from St. Leger and Burgoyne from taking over the upper Hudson River Valley. All right, he was from Poland. All right, and Thaddeus Kosciuszko will also go on to design some of the fortifications at West Point, which is our military academy today for those that go into the Army. Casimir Pulaski, he was another important volunteer from Poland. He's going to lead and train colonists and form a cavalry unit. A cavalry unit, if you don't know what a cavalry unit is a unit, all right, that fights on horseback. Okay, so he trained, I can't really write that in, don't really have much room there, but you should write in, know that a cavalry unit is a unit that fights on horseback, and that's what Casimir Pulaski, he helped the colonists with that. And then Friedrich von Steuben, right, he was from the Prussian army, and he's going to teach colonists basically how to be a soldier. He teaches them how to march, establishes discipline. He teaches colonists to improve their aim with muskets, and he's also going to teach them how to use their bayonets, when to fasten their bayonets, when to use them. And the book that's used at West Point to teach our cadets how to march, if you watched the Army-Navy game and you saw the cadets marching out on the field this past year. All right, some of the procedures in marching and some of the tactics used in battle was developed by Friedrich von Steuben. Right? He's going to kind of set precedent for the U.S. military. And this help from all these volunteers and from France and unofficial help from Spain is going to help the United States win the war by providing them with weapons, ships, and manpower. All right, so those were three things that the colonists really needed to kind of even the playing field with Great Britain, and they got that support. Right? And eventually, we will go on to support those other countries in their endeavors. All right, so this is the last slide of section 2. What you need to know is each of these individuals, Marquis de Lafayette, Comte de Rochambeau, Thaddeus Kosciuszko, Casimir Pulaski, and Friedrich von Steuben. Okay, I forgot to mention this. Know that he was helpful he was at Valley Forge. All right, I'll talk about this tomorrow. He was at Valley Forge. And at Valley Forge, that's when the Continental Army is going to do a lot of their training. Even though it was such a harsh winter, that's when they were able to transform farmers and blacksmiths and carpenters into soldiers. And Friedrich von Steuben receives a lot of credit for that. All right, so this is the last slide for today. Only 2 slides of notes. I wanted to wrap up section 2. And tomorrow we'll start section 3, Life Off the Battlefield. And then we'll get to the end of the American Revolution. Okay, if you have any questions on these 2 slides, feel free to ask those questions at the beginning of class tomorrow. You can always email me if you have questions. I probably won't get back to those emails today because I'm on retreat. But tomorrow I'll be sure to address those questions in class. Thank you everyone for listening in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.